Time for world politics, and we'll see who joins us. But in the meantime, I'll give you a little bit of political news. According to The Independent, the Trump administration has already spent $155 billion more than former President Joe Biden did over the same period of time after their inaugurations, according to Treasury Department data. And Elon Musk is now claiming that his Department of Government Efficiency has only managed to save $150 billion. That means that despite tens of thousands of government workers being fired, agencies shuttered, contracts cut, and federal services dramatically reduced, the current administration has already racked up an additional $5 billion of debt than the Biden administration in the same space of time. So that's something that is being talked about, and it's not clear that Doge has saved anywhere near $150 billion. Every time Musk posts receipts to show off Doge's savings, they're riddled with errors. He initially vowed to save $2 trillion by slashing government agencies and social benefits, then half that to $1 trillion. Now he's claimed he has only cut a fraction of that. The increased spending by the Trump administration was discovered in an analysis by the Wall Street Journal of daily financial statements issued by the Treasury Department. Costs have continued to climb even as Trump and the Republicans aim to negotiate a $5 trillion tax cut that is expected to add an additional $5.7 trillion to the government's debt over the next decade. The current debt is already $37.3 trillion. So that's something going on in that space. And the highest payments in 2024 were Social Security at $1.5 trillion, interest on the debt at $881 billion, the Department of Defense at $807 billion, and the Medicare at $865 billion. Social Security payments are $32.7 billion higher since Trump took office. The U.S. has also paid out $25.5 billion more in interest on the debt since Trump returned to the White House than in the same period last year. So total mandatory costs like Social Security ate up $4.9 trillion last year, while total discretionary costs like defense spending cost $1.8 trillion. So Doge impacts have been mixed and will be impacted by Republicans' planned tax cuts, which would slash government income. Some firings and cuts have been blocked by court orders. In some cases, job buyouts may have raised costs, at least in the short term. So definitely even in the Don Snyder, the deputy head of U.S. policy at the investment bank Piper Sandler, said, "I think the net effect of Doge on federal spending, at least insofar as we can track it in the daily Treasury statement, has been pretty small. It will take time for those savings to accumulate, but it will also be dependent on the administration prevailing in court over some of these actions." So like I said, I'm going to bring in Sasha Starr, see what he's got to say about these debts and all along those lines, because that is one of the things that folks are talking about in the world of politics. So I'll see if anybody else joins us, but it does look like there is some notion that we're still in debt in the United States. And I know you folks in Canada are talking the tariffs and what y'all are doing to counter the tariffs and all along those lines, but it looks like the amount of money that was going to be saved is nowhere near the amount that was promised and everything like that. So what's your take on what's going on? Is it all lip service that Trump's giving us, or is he actually got a plan to his action?
Mark, I would like to tell you that it's not a simple math how much you saved here and how much you spent a little bit more there or so on. Trump is destroying all economic systems, the trade system that U.S. itself established in the world since 1945, the end of Second World War. So U.S. established a certain system of trading and economic cooperation between countries, and Trump is completely destroying it. So the math, I think it's a secondary. It's easy to calculate, so this is why it's in a way attractive way of estimating the Trump's success or failure. But it's not that. It's the system is being broken. And the new system slowly will arise but there will be no leading position of US anymore. And with that, the dollar, the almighty dollar it is going down already, and it will go much, much lower because it will no longer be the reserve currency. The new blocks that are rising now, if you take China, Japan, and South Korea bloc, why do they need dollar to trade? They just don't. The BRICS country are trying to completely avoid dollar. They will. Many other blocks that are arising now, they might use a euro. They may use some other ways of dealing with the trade issues. It's not going to be a dollar. And with that, with Japanese and Chinese are dumping their reserves, the bonds, US bonds denominated in US dollars, they're dumping it every single week. So go and figure out then where it leads us. It's not, look, Canada is a small potato in this world game. So Canada is standing on its own. It's trying to make also new associations, trade associations with the European Union, with China, by the way. Just very recently, Canada made a first large shipment of its oil to China. Canada completed its pipeline, which is going from Edmonton, Alberta, to port in British Columbia. And guess what? United States slept. They thought that it's so insignificant. Who cares what Canada is doing? Because US was under the impression that all Canadian oil will be sent to United States. Well, it's no longer the case. They're now working on deals with the European Union, and in fact, they're trying to have as little trade with the US as possible. And by the way, for example, the tourism all over the world has almost stopped. Nobody is going to the United States. Canada doesn't started it a couple of months ago, but now all other countries, they avoid traveling to US. They stopped it. It cost billions of dollars to US economy. That Trump is the primary reason for that. So math sometimes is not all issue what is there. There are a lot of more.
Speaking of that, and I know y'all were talking about it earlier on the Ukraine show and everything, but I just wanted if you could talk a little bit about what's going on with the journalists in Russia, because I did see as we were getting prepared for this show that Russia jailed 4 journalists for their alleged links to Alexei Navalny anti-corruption group, and I know that he had definitely been seen as a criminal foe convicted of extremism and sentenced to prison, but it looks like they have gone after the journalists as well there in Moscow. So I just wanted your take on this particular case and all along those lines, since it is a political case in a part of the world that you used to live in and all in that space in the sense of Ukraine and having worked for the Soviet army and all along those lines. But I just wanted your take on this.
Well, Putin is trying to have his bank of all kinds of prisoners, and sometimes there is no American ballerina is available, or American journalist, or somebody else. So he's prisoning his own people in hope to exchange it for his spies held in the United States or elsewhere in Western Europe or anywhere. So he's just increasing his life bank of people that he will use for exchange with US and others for Russian spies.
It makes sense and everything. Along those same lines, I know that Nick talks about China a lot, and that show is actually called Ukraine, Russia, and China and everything. But Xi Jinping looks like he is trying to get more of the Asian countries to help him as he's opposing what he's calling bullying as Trump mulls even more tariffs. So what is your take on the Chinese leadership and what they are doing in terms of courting other countries?
I think that the tariffs of Donald Trump are ill-timed. He should have done it, or actually the United States should have done it maybe 30 years ago, when U.S. has enormous advantage of all other countries, including China and many others. Today, it's a little bit too little too late. I think United States is losing its enormous advantage that it used to have before. And today, there is a huge risk that the rest of the world will unite against United States, will have its new trading blocks, and United States will have very difficult time, especially with the $9 trillion have to be refinanced this year alone. Go and figure out who are going to purchase this U.S. debt. Who? Federal Reserve probably will step in. I really don't know. So they have to, instead of easing the interest rates, they will have to raise interest rates. And how Trump will justify it to American people? Say, well, sorry, our partners not buying U.S. debt, so we have to raise interest rates to make them more attractive. So people will have to pay more for their mortgages, for car loans, for everything. And is that why people voted for Trump and brought him to power? It's just the beginning. People will have to really pay for their choice. It's a payback time, baby.
Sounds like it's payback time and all along those lines. Speaking of that, and in that space, there has been conversation. I've heard it on social media, and I know that Rick has brought it up. I think even Nick has brought it up, and all along those lines. Do you think that the American people needs to be afraid of a possible third term, even though technically it's not supposed to be able to happen because of constitutional restraints? But do you think that America needs to be nervous about this notion of a third term from Trump, even though technically he's also supposed to have 2 terms?
I don't think that he will last even his second term until the end. I think that most likely there will be a midterm election which Republicans will lose badly, and depends on the result, the impeachment will become a very real possibility.
Yeah, it sounds like a real possibility. Over there in London, there's been this strike going on. So I just wanted your take on that, this strike, and if there is any end, because I know y'all have had strikes in Canada as well, but apparently there's a whole notion about UK and even their thoughts around Chinese steel investments. But I just wondered if you've been following that story and your thoughts about this strike that apparently is impacting even the sanitation industry there in London.
No, I'm not familiar with that story. Tell me more about it.
Well, I mean, they've been at strike for a while. They've been going on strike, and they've been even tying into one of the leading Chinese companies, because China's got some interest in British steel, and even UK is saying that they're cautious over future Chinese steel investments because they have invested heavily in steel. But there's definitely this notion of even how much vital UK infrastructure does China own, just like how much do they own here in the United States as well. So it's a notion of, does China have its hands too much in the economies of the world?
Well, China's economy, you see, there is a understanding or quite popular explanation is that China is a communist country, and it's run by communists or so on. This is it's a very very primitive suggestion, is because China developed its own economic system, which is based on private enterprise, and also the overall the social or communist, if you want to call it, that's fine, enterprise. So it is a hybrid system. And it seems to me that it's very well suited for Chinese people at large. It seems to me that they are quite happy with the existing system. I'm not suggesting that 100% of people are happy, or most likely not, but majority is. And China, through its economic success primarily, uh, it has more and more influence over the economics of many countries, and it's very successfully developing its relationship with the African countries. It's came to the point that it amasses 90% of production of rare earth metals, and that's what United States need badly to produce autos, planes, and just almost name it. And guess what? They have to get it from China. If China, as it is now, turned away supply of rare earth metals, the U.S. has incredible difficulties. And US today hardly has any materials or any technology or anything that China badly needs and cannot survive without US. So that's what I'm saying, that everything what Trump is doing now, it's too little, too late. US should have done something like that 30 years ago. Today, no effect at all. Actually, only negative.
Sounds like it and everything. I know that one of our panelists that has been on several shows. He's not been in recently, but sometimes he comes in on the chat. That being Adam Lamparello, talks about the benevolent dictatorship of Singapore and all along those lines. But as I reported in the news earlier today, they are announcing general elections and they're dissolving their parliament. So this is for either you, Sasha, or you, Rick. Does this mean that Singapore
hold on.
is
I
a
want
threat?
to address what Sasha previously said, which we should have done something about this 30 years ago. Trump turned 79 years old in June. His solutions and the things he's concerned about, it makes sense that he would be 30 years out of date. That would have been, what he was paying attention to when he was freaking 49 years old.
Yeah, but he was not at power at that time. He was...
No, but maybe that's, he's still focused on the solutions that he was thinking about. He's been talking about tariffs for decades.
Well, his life, yeah, that's true. Yeah. So now finally when he's in power, so he's implementing this really, really ill-advised strategy, which will lead the United States to even further losses. And eventually, if all world will unite on trade against the United States, it will be humiliation.
So to go to Singapore, why is Singapore getting rid of its government?
Isn't it election time?
It's election time.
Oh, okay. So it's scheduled. So, well, Singapore works really well, but I mean, Singapore has the advantage of having, I don't know, 2 million people, less than that.
Yeah, it's a tiny country. I was many years ago. I was in Singapore. It's at that time, was it, say, 30 years ago? You can't believe how technologically they are advanced at that time, and now even more. If you'll compare it to the United States, for example, their subway system, they have no conductors. The train run automatically. They have railways that the train, when there is a turn, that there is an elevation which train elevates one way. So even if you don't hold on to anything, nothing will happen to you. You can stand and nothing will just affect your balance. And the platforms are all closed. It opens only when train arrives, and it opens only at
at the doors.
Distance where the train doors are, that's where they open automatically at the same time, both trains doors and the platforms doors.
You don't have the problem that New York City has, where people get pushed onto the tracks by maniacs.
No, it's impossible. It's simply impossible. So
we've got Steve joining us as well.
About to log into I got to go to another meeting, but it's great to see you guys. Wanted to just come in and chime in before I head out. It's just, well, how do you begin to so much disruption in the world with tariffs, the trade wars, inflationary costs. I mean, I just don't get it. I mean, this is just crazy. The only good news, it could be good news for Democrats in 2026, a world divided, a Europe that's against, and I know I have Sasha Star here, and I just want to tell Sasha last Friday, I went to an amazing event hosted by the Ukrainian Association about drones, and they had a lady there, Dr. Sipovich, Livia Sipovich, who runs a company called Dignitas Fund, and what they're doing is they're doing a lot of cutting edge research for drone technology that's helping them fight really, really magnificent. And it was a very emotional fundraiser for me. Man, I got to interact with so many Ukrainians that the story is being told, and it was amazing. And I think it's something that we have to continue. And we had meetings with the mayor of Raleigh and First Flight Venture Center, and there's talk about them coming back in June for a defense conference with the North Carolina Military Business Center, where we could leverage defense. So that's something I never heard of how can we leverage our strength in the United States with technology to work with such an innovative nation like Ukraine. So just wanted to throw that out there. I thought of you. It was a most wonderful event.
Yeah, wonderful news. I want to tell you something that it's been decision of Germany to give Ukraine their system. It's a very powerful weapons, the missile system by the name Taurus. They can hit targets 500 kilometers away. So there's nothing today can stop Ukraine to hit targets such as Moscow and St. Petersburg and any other large cities. Now, what's effect of it is that the Germany mentioned that the purpose of these Taurus missiles is to hit and destroy Crimean Bridge, which will have Crimean Bridge non-existent, and therefore all supply of Crimea will stop to halt.
You've been talking about that for a long. How come they haven't done it yet?
It's only now with the new Chancellor of Germany. It's been announced just on Friday.
So now they can do that, and I know you've been talking about that for a while. Come back to Singapore. They did say this will be Singapore's 14th election since independence, and it'll be Lawrence Wong's first as Prime Minister. Polling day will be on May 3rd, and nomination day will be on April 23rd, so about a week from now. And apparently their ruling party, and I know that's part of what Adam talks about, is how benevolent they are, got 61.24% of the vote and won 83 out of 93 parliamentary seats. So in that particular country, they do seem to have a iron glass, that the ruling party, and all along those lines. I did have a question for you, Sasha, because it looks like we've been having.
I got to run. Got to go to a council meeting, but that was my update. Sorry, guys. I'll be back in March. Win or lose this election.
I appreciate that and everything, and I definitely know you're keeping busy with that election campaign there in Wake County. But Sasha, I know that tomorrow you'll be talking modern investments with Milan and hopefully Jim Eade and some other people as well. But I did say that the stocks, speaking of the tariffs, made the biggest moves after hours, and apparently United Airlines and JB Hunt did well. So I was just wondering your take on that, because I did see that on some of the news reports from other TV stations. So are the stocks recovering somewhat from the tariff news, or is this just a kind of a hiccup in the system and they'll start going back down, or are they starting to recover?
For stocks to go higher, they have to stop falling. So the first thing, they have to find some kind of a bottom where they can stay without falling for at least 2-3 days in a row. If that could be achieved, then we can talk about short-term recovery of some kind of the suckers rally, if you want to call it, or whatever. Otherwise, there is very little reasons for a rally rather than stocks were oversold. So there will be also, if there are still a lot of short sellers, so this suckers rally may push some pressure on short sellers, and they will become buyers of the stock, which will make that rally somewhat stronger. But longer term, market is going to go down. That's there's no other way. And US dollar will go down. It still keep going down. It hasn't stopped, It's decline. It's right there. So
Yeah.
the picture is not very pretty.
Well,
So
today
let's
was
talk about long-term trends. Like Singapore, you said this is their 14th election since independence, and
right.
they have good governance. They get a lot. It's a tiny country, which makes them nimble. They're rich. The U.S. has 1/3 of a billion people, and for the past more than 50 years, the Republicans have been wrangling America's yahoos, some of America's worst people, some of America's dumbest people, to work against America's best interests. And this is the result. After 50 years, you've got entrenched craziness, and it makes it almost impossible to get anything done. Certainly for the next almost 2 years till the midterms, we're stuck with garbage decisions, and America's worst president trying to grab more and more power.
Well, speaking of that and everything, there were 20,000 IRS employees. I know a lot of people like the IRS. Some people don't like the IRS, and I'm being very sarcastic when I say that, but they are interested in a deferred resignation offer as tax deadline looms. I think it's midnight for most people on this particular day, and about 20,000 Internal Revenue Service employees have expressed interest in accepting the Trump administration's latest deferred resignation offers, which would mean the IRS would shrink by about 20% if all those staffers ultimately take the buyout offer. So if you're going to have a agency that is supposed to monitor what folks are doing on tax day and other days, wouldn't that be harder to do if you're
this is good news for rich people. They've done studies, they've done the math, and for every IRS employee you lose, on average, you lose X amount of dollars from rich people cheating. The IRS at the end of Biden was supposed to add 87,000 new employees.
Right.
This wasn't to audit regular people. This was to answer the phone. This was to ask questions. And this was to look at rich tax avoiders who avoid tens of billions of dollars in taxes every year. And now it's just gotten a whole lot easier. My dad was a CPA for 60 years. And the IRS in the 60s, the 70s, 80s, it was feared that you got audited. You had to come in with all your receipts. You had to explain yourself. And if you were taking questionable tax shelters, you would get caught and you would have to pay your fair share. The last 20 years, I've started doing our taxes, and I didn't get stuff right. And sometimes I would guess at the numbers. And then I didn't get audited. I got a letter from the IRS generated by a computer that said, "What's up with this?" And then I'd write back, I go, "Oops, sorry if I made a mistake." Or if I didn't, I'd send, I'd Xerox something and I'd include that and explain what the deal was. I never felt afraid. I mean, and we shouldn't have to feel afraid of the IRS, but there hasn't been effective enforcement for rich people in more than a decade.
Well, we got a rich person now that's one of the founders of the network, that being Nick, who's now living in Spain and everything. So
yeah, but I bet you Nick paid his fair share of taxes. He used a good.
That's my number one budget item. What are you talking about? I mean, number one. It's just kind of like the way it is. It's really, really hard when you have earned income or income to not. But the higher you get up, the more you can use shelters. There's a lot of different tools. It really hurts a lot of the middle class more than it does the rich people, because people like, who's your friend? Elon Musk, he's your buddy. See, all he does is he takes loans against his stock portfolio, which is non-taxable. So he skates, and you have a system that is just horrible.
And everybody in America knows how to launder money now. If you watch the show Breaking Bad, they show step by step. I mean, it's not hard to launder money. You just have another business that you run the money through, and it showed how they ran it through a car wash.
Yeah.
And there are people, and rich people know how to do it better than you run your money offshore. Everybody knows about offshore.
I have money offshore, but that doesn't mean I'm laundering money. Although both my accountants and my banks were, I had to fill out, and my attorney over here, I had to fill out tons of anti-money laundering statements. But to get money into Spain, I have to transport it to England and then exchange it, so I get a decent exchange rate, and then transport to my bank account in Spain. And then when you transfer large sums, they go, "Where'd you get the money from?" And all, so they have the Anti-Money Laundering Act exists here in the European Union. You fill out all these forms, but at the same time, I'm going, does it really stop people from laundering money? Probably not.
Hey, Nick, there used to be a very popular thing. Nick, there used to be a very popular thing that was out there. I'm not sure that it's still out there, but is it still out there in that sense? Do people still use, when they're going overseas, traveler's checks? Because I remember hearing that as a thing 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, but I don't know if people are still.
We now use their mark as credit cards. Okay, the thing is, I can go to every day I buy stuff on my stupid credit cards. In other words, credit cards, you get good exchange rates, but traveler's checks are basically dead. Credit cards are hot, though. I mean, they're accepted everywhere. And it's not just American Express, Visa, MasterCard, they run instantaneously. It's actually pretty cool. The thing that's bothering me right now is the exchange rate for the US dollar. Your dollar has sunk to like a 20-year low against the European dollar. So the US dollar just went from 98, it was like as high as 98 cents to like now down to 88 cents. It doesn't mean anything, except when you're exchanging $500,000 or $1 million, it starts adding up. What's 10 basis points on $500,000? You lost 50 grand. Seriously, it's like, wow. What do you do? Nothing. I just lost 50,000. Why? Because
if you want to buy a Mini Cooper or one of those little Fiats, which you see a lot of around LA, between the depreciation of the dollar and the tariffs, I don't know, you're adding another 12 grand to the cost of your car?
Yeah. Well, the good news in here, you can get around without a car. I ditched both my cars, and I've been getting around without a car because public transportation is so great. They actually have subways, and they have trams, and they have trains, and they have buses. You can go everywhere in Barcelona. You don't need and you don't want a car. It's like Manhattan. If you're in Manhattan, you have a car, you're an idiot because you can't drive anywhere. You're stuck in traffic, and you can't park anywhere.
Well, I'll ask the young ladies when they start their show and everything. But how is it for those folks that are younger to middle age that might be out there in the club setting? Because I know that was one of the issues here, was that you could definitely get transportation, and you could have transportation even locally in the bus system and some of the other systems, but it wasn't always easy if you decided to stay out after the midnight hour and everything, if I can use the lyrics from a blues song and everything. But how is it in terms of a mass transit in Spain after hours?
It hasn't been much of a problem. In other words, they run almost all the time, Mark. So it's pretty easy to get around without a car. So we ditched both of our cars, and we're getting a place in Badalona, which is the beach place here. Here's the real problem. People want to know what's the real problem with Spain. Getting a place to live. Seriously, you want to rent a place? Good luck. What place? Okay, it takes you months just to get a place to rent because, first of all, you have a language barrier, and then second of all, there's nothing available. Then you want to buy a place? Good luck. Okay, unless you want to buy a place that's extremely small. I mean, closet space. Forget it. They're in so they have a real housing issue here. Now I'm talking Barcelona. If you go outside of Barcelona or Madrid, then you can get anything you want at prices that you can't believe. So if you go to these small towns, they'll even pay you to move here. Seriously, they'll give you like $3 grand. Come to our town. It's just
when people find out you're an American, are they sympathetic to what's going on in your?
No, they don't really track what goes on over here. Over in the United States. Frankly, I don't think they care. They're so into what goes on to the European Union. The only thing is your president is such an idiot. He hits the newspapers over here because of his stupid tariffs.
But do they care about the deportations? And what do they think about the deportations? Because I know even here, and Toby may have some thoughts around this and everything. There is a Sudanese student, a basketball player, that is being threatened with deportation as one of the Duke stars and all along those lines. So what is their take on these international students that are being deported, and sometimes not even for making statements? It's just because they're from a certain country that might be on the hit list, which may be the case with this Sudanese student and everything. So
they don't follow American garbage. I mean, the thing is, most people here, what they spend most of their time doing is going to the coffee shops downstairs and eating their tapas bar. And this is the thing that, if one of something bugs you, how Americans work all the time. I don't know if the Spanish work. They go downstairs, they're drinking coffee in the morning, and then in the afternoon they're eating their tapas, and then they're gone in the evening.
Hold on. We shouldn't have to work as hard as we do in America. Productivity has, thanks to tech, productivity has expanded, I don't know, more than fivefold since World War II. But workers do not, and the work ethic does not benefit from it. Europeans work like 20% fewer hours per year than Americans do. They get like twice, 3 times as many vacation weeks, and their industries get along just fine.
They take a month off. Usually it's August, and everybody takes off the whole month off. It's not,
and the country doesn't fall apart. It's fine.
They have a very slower way of life. They don't even walk as fast. Like in New York, people walk. Like here, they walk, but they don't.
There's another thing about car culture in America. It helps make us idiots, because when you're on public transportation, when you're walking the streets of a city, you're interacting with people, and it gives you, I don't know, more of an appreciation for other people. In America, if you're at home on your computer, and when you're not, you're in your car, you're all alone, and you've got this anonymous existence, which encourages you to be an asshole to people because you don't see them face to face.
And the life expectancy here is like 84. It's second in the world, only behind Japan. But also they have the Mediterranean diet, and I have to admit it's a little bit slower. They don't. In New York, they walk fast. In Spain, they don't. They walk, but they don't walk fast, and they don't push. They don't shove. I have yet to see people that get into like any heated debate or argument, and it's certainly not comparable to Miami, where I was telling my friends when they come there, you always get to watch somebody get beat up somewhere in the streets. I haven't seen any of that stuff here. It's like, so it's a pretty boring existence, if you want to put it that way.
So what's the leading thing that they discuss?
What, Mark?
What's the leading thing they talk about in Spain? Like when you're in those bars, what are they talking about? Are they talking about their sport teams? Or are they talking about their
sports teams? The biggest thing is soccer. If you want to know what the biggest thing is, it's soccer, baby. FC Barcelona is hot, and the soccer matches are hot. In other words, who are they playing? Are they playing Madrid? And so soccer is like definitely the number one thing that's discussed in Spain. It's not anything else. And politics is like number 2, but they're just not into it. And if it is, it's European Union stuff. In other words, what the European Union is doing, not so much the United States. But Trump has invaded. He does hit the newspapers here because they're all confused as to what is going on with this.
Hold on a second, because I got a question for Jacoby, if Jacoby can get off mic and everything, because I know that the Bulls and the Hurricanes have a lot of players that are from foreign countries. So are those players worried at all about the tariffs and these threats of deportation?
I can't answer that one, Mark, because I don't know.
That are in that space.
Mark, I can't answer that one because I don't know.
Okay. So you can discuss hockey. And did you see who won the National Collegiate Athletic Association hockey this year? Jacoby.
I did actually watch that there was, I didn't get a chance to watch the actual game. I saw some of the highlights of the game. But outside of that, no, I didn't get a chance because I was in the middle of working when that game was going on. So I didn't get a chance. All I got to see was what was on ESPN.
Western Michigan won the Nationals this year. They beat my team because I used to go to the University of Denver Law School. They beat Denver. Denver's always been hot when it comes to hockey. And then they beat Boston University, another really good hockey team. And so Western Michigan, kudos to them. They won the NCAA this year because it is so hard for a mid-major university to shine anywhere in this country because everything is so fixed. And that's another problem with the United States, whether you guys know it or not. Mobility is like nothing. In other words, there's no mobility in education. There's no mobility, very little mobility in sports, very little mobility in anything, you know?
I will agree with you completely in social economics and in business. In sports, it's tougher due to the fact that depending on what sport and the way that sports is done now, when Bill came into college, that has harmed college athletics a lot due to the fact that it's unregulated and plenty of different colleges are throwing so much money at these different players. So your big time colleges are always getting the best players. And it's always going to be that. It used to be where some of those mid-majors could break through because like your mid-major like Boise could always had an opportunity. App State always had an opportunity. These days, especially now in football and in basketball, if you notice, this was the second time in a bunch of years that all number one seeds went through. And all number one seeds pretty much went through pretty easy. Florida, even though they were down a few times in the NCAA tournament, they still came back and won pretty handily every time they were down. But the problem is, Bill, you're paying all these big time players, and then due to the fact that the mobility issue is based on your not only your visibility. So if you're not in one of those big time schools that has that visibility, you're not going to be seen. So those players that could be decent in those mid majors or small time schools are going to have a little tougher time to get. So mobility in athletics is a different beast, but mobility in business and social economics, if you're stuck in the middle class, it's always going to be harder to move out. If you're stuck in poverty, you're pretty much generations stuck in poverty.
Yeah, and they call it the Gini coefficient. The Gini coefficient in the United States is really low. So the thing is that what they're showing is mobility in the United States is really low. So if you're born in poverty and moving to middle class is extremely difficult. Middle class, you want to go upper class, extremely difficult. It's almost like whatever class you're born in, you're going to die in, which basically means
people who like that are the rich people who just want to stay where they are.
Well, what I'm going to ask is,
the thing is, if you're in the top 1%
and everything, but how much mobility is there? One of the things they used to talk about in the Great Depression and even in the Harlem Renaissance was people like moving from the South up to the Northeast, and there were other things that people would move to the West Coast from the like the Texas area and other places. But I don't know that there are as much people that are doing that much mobility in this particular day and time. So I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but are we seeing a decrease in mobility around the United States and even around the world to what Nick is saying and everything? So not everybody can be the traveling nomad that Nick is and everything, but I find a lot of people that are born in the city that they are from, even though there are a lot of people that come down to the college and stay within the state that they moved to for college, like a number of people have done that here in North Carolina. But how much is the mobility the same as it used to be? I guess is the question I'm asking you, fine gentlemen.
It's just, I think it's just a lot harder. And the thing is, you have money trapped in the 1%, and the 1% isn't going to let any of it go, you know? And, how can you have a country when 1% owns 30% and the top 10% own 90%, and then the bottom 50% don't own anything? You don't have a middle class. And I'll tell you, Mark, and this is what Henry Ford also saw as a problem. Now you want to sell a product, and you realize the people that you sell to, you can't sell to them anymore because they're all broke. You know, so Henry Ford decided he's going to pay everybody a living wage because he goes, at least they can buy my cars. But in the United States, that's not how it works. You're really skewed toward the 1% and the top 10%, and they're doing really well. I have them as clients. Financially, they're doing great. But the thing is, you got this huge population base that is, at least financially, screwed. But here's the good news. They're better than they were 10 years ago. Okay.
So I have a question for Sasha.
Well, before you get to that question, though, before you get to that question, I just wanted to touch base. I just wanted to reiterate, similar to what Nick was saying, and point out that a lot of what the problem is in terms of creating that separation and creating that the bottom 50 or the bottom 50%, the top 10% own 90% of the wealth in the country. All that is due to, again, it goes back to what was it before Nixon? When it was created, the American dream idea became lodged in everybody's head, is that this is what you're going for. This is what you want to attain. And those that attain it are those that you strive to be. So why are you going to attack those that strive to be if you haven't gotten there? So you're going to fight with everybody else around you who has nothing, but this 10% has more. So you're going to protect the 10% and keep that separation. And you end up creating a society or the country that fights for that 10% to own the 90%, because one day you're going to be there and it's never going to happen.
But see, that's the reality what you said.
All right, for Sasha.
It ain't happening.
So
Okay.
Does the European Union get a windfall from these trade wars? If the U.S. pulls itself out of the world economy through dumbness, does the EU end up doing more business and becoming a little richer? And does that, in a way, help Ukraine a little bit because the EU has more revenue with which to help finance Ukraine against Russia?
Yeah, I would say the answer is yes. The European Union. You see, Europe would do really well if they stopped the European stupid wars. I mean, it would be a great place to live if they didn't have World War I and World War II. But they had their stupid European wars. But let's say they get rid of their wars, which it looks like they have because they now have the, quote, European Union. Then it becomes a great place to live. And if the United States stumbles, which really they weren't that big of an economic power until after World War II, then the European Union can overtake the United States. They have more population, 443 million compared to, 380 million. They don't have as much GDP, but they're third behind US, China, then the European Union. And so it's quite possible they end up overtaking the United States. Anyway, I'm betting on it. Whether it's
for Sasha, how do America's tariff blunders affect Ukraine and the war?
It only helps Ukraine because, United States is disqualifying itself from the primary positions it used to have since Second World War. So now European Union, especially with all this announcement by J.D. Vance and others, they feel that they have to take over the running of NATO, which they do, and the United States didn't even send anybody on a recent meeting in Ramstein. Just one of them, I don't remember the name, so he was on the video conference call, but nothing significant was said or done. And new German chancellor now announced that Ukraine is getting, as I said, Taurus missiles that can shoot at 500 kilometers distance. So they can easily, actually the purpose he made, that they will be used to destroy the Crimean bridge. So the Crimea will no longer be supplied from the mainland Russia. And that States is basically has no effect on ruling this war one way or another, because obviously Trump's special representative Witkoff which has no status, no diplomatic experience. He's just a man, friend of Trump at one time. He's easily eaten by Russian experienced diplomats. There's no effect of anything. So they're discussing some business projects or whatever it might be. It has no effect on to end Ukrainian war. In the meantime, Ukraine is getting what's the last package from European Union is $20 billion, not the peanuts that US was claiming it supplied Ukraine, but it didn't. It spent most of its money right there in the United States. So, in fact, for Ukraine, it's a godsend. Trump and his policies, it's really a godsend because right now, Ukraine's getting everything what it wanted. It's there. It's on its way to arrivals. And once all this nonsense with Witkoff's and Trump's peace initiatives, and once it will fail, and hopefully it will fail no later than the end of this month, then Ukraine will strike at Russia with all its weapons that it now has in abundance. It's not doing now for the talks still to continue, but it's getting obvious that nothing good will arrive out of it.
Hey, question for you and Rick and anybody else that wants to take it. Even Nick may want to take it as well and everything. If you watch the news, even here on our network, and definitely if you watch it on the major networks, you hear about war and strife around the world, whether that's in Ukraine, whether that's in Israel, whether that's in African countries like Sudan and Eritrea and Ethiopia, still fighting against each other. And even sometimes you'll even hear about Ireland, and I could name several other conflicts. You can go and look anytime at Wikipedia any day of the week, and you'll find various war conflicts that are going on. Will there ever be a time, or will we all have to wait for the return of the like a savior, like Jesus or something like that, to end war in general? Or was war always going to be a part of our life and everything? Or will there ever be a time that war is not in existence?
Well,
We will never ever have a utopian society where the war or fighting or strife is not around. That's a dream, a vision. That is something that we all want, but we have to be honest. War, fights, struggles, everything has always been around. Even in Jesus' time, there was a fight, there was a war. Even Moses had fights and wars. There's never been a time in our life, in the history of the humanity, has there never been an area where there was some type of fight, struggle.
But the means of war and what war looks like is changing all the time. We've been in cyber war with China and Russia for decades. Yeah. We attack. Well, I don't know. Under Trump, maybe we're attacking less, but we attack China via hacking, tens of thousands of times a day. China does, tries to hack us, 100 times a minute. It constantly poking at various computer systems, both governmental and private industry systems, to see what they can find out. And also to hide stuff in that when the time comes so they can take stuff out.
Now, remember, we lost the Doge or Trump administration cut a lot of those same individuals that you're talking about that protected us from those things. So we are, in every way possible, we are less safe now than we were 3 months ago.
And China in cyber war, China will not try to take us down now while we're taking ourselves down. China will just embed backdoors and little bugs that if they ever need to take us down, they can. But right now we're doing a good job on ourselves.
Yeah, actually, my friends in China keep reminding me that they tend to stay out of wars, and the United States tends to get in them, and then they show the whole history of the U.S. and all the conflicts But nobody really wins these wars. See, that's the thing. I'm going to win the war. You lose. The only question is, how much did you lose? It doesn't benefit anybody to get in these wars that are going on. I don't see how Russia or Ukraine are going to benefit from this.
Well, China was called the Hermit.
How the Gaza Strip. I don't see any. And you know what? Most of the people in the Gaza Strip, most of the people in Israel, they don't want any of that stuff. They have no interest in the conflict between Hamas and Israel whatsoever. They just want to go to work, go eat, go to sleep, go to work, go eat, go to sleep, and live a good life. I mean,
China was called the Hermit Kingdom. It kept to itself. While other nations built naval fleets, China built the Great Wall. China, has tried to be insular and self-sufficient for 1,000 years. And so, I can see that they think they can win. We can without.
Here's an interesting thing to tie it back to Nick's and Sasha's favorite thing in chess. In chess, is the goal to get the king or to kill everybody on the board?
Right now, there's a world championship between two Chinese ladies. And they're so superior to all others, including Russian and Indians, and everything. They're just on top of themselves. Although one is leading 6-2 against the other. Current world champion. She's but that's a very, very interesting event. And of course, there is a proliferation of, if you want to talk about chess, proliferation of so-called freestyle chess, which means that there are 960 different positions, how the pieces can be assembled on a chessboard. So there's no preparation. They have to start from zero. They have 10 minutes to prepare for each game. And it's very interesting to watch this because there are so many unusual positions arising from the move one. It's just incredible, and it's being played by all leading players.
Yeah.
Actually, real quick, Mark. And see, this is why I'm a 5-year-old kid at heart. Now you were talking about 900 and some odd positions, and then how the positions were. Rick popped in my mind, and I was going to ask Rick, how many positions are in the Kama Sutra?
I don't know, probably a few hundred. I tried reading it in college, and it's I don't know, it's really kind of boring. I mean, and we know more about positions just from going on the internet now. And really, there aren't that many positions. Like, I mean, you look at enough people.
Probably only certain basic ones.
My prediction of Ukraine will be part of the European
before we get ready to
10 years.
wrap up and all along those lines, I was going to say that we did talk on Naked at Night, because I brought it up, a famous book that dealt with sex, which was the Herod Experiment, which was a free love type book, and I used to have a copy of it, so that came up as I brought it up on Naked at Night. So you can go back and watch those episodes, because they should be up if they're not already up, and all along those lines. So that is something that Rick does with his buddy Lance at Lake Town to do that point counterpoint.
I'm reading an essay in The Atlantic talking about the pornographization of the United States and how we've gone from a society that participates in sex to a society that just watches other people have sex.
Well, in the future, you're just going to watch AI have sex, Rick. I don't know if you see all these programs they're pushing out. All these hot chicks are coming out, and they're all AI.
Yeah,
so,
no, like if you Google AI porn, it will return to you a list of 150 websites that have and the more than 80% of them are build your own AI girlfriend.
Yeah. I think the porn industry is dead. It's all going to be replaced by computers.
Well, I mean,
unbelievable what they're doing.
Hold on. So porn as an industry for companies has been in trouble for a long time. Porn as individual entrepreneurship on OnlyFans, that's a lot of people are making, I guess, decent money. OnlyFans has 1.1 million models on it.
Y'all
Yeah.
say it's dead, but if you do a
I'm
Google
afraid
search,
that
if
your
y'all do a
best
Google search, you
friend,
can come
your
up
best
with
friend you're going to
thousands,
have
if
in
not
life
tens of thousands
will
or
be an
hundreds of
AI
thousands of
person going
movies that are
places
in that space and
in 5
everything. So I
years.
don't know that it's a dead industry. I don't know that those people are making money, and some of them are doing it as a kind of like home movies and everything like that. But I don't know that it's a dead industry.
Who is watching full-on porno movies? I would think that most of the people in the world are just going on the internet and searching for clips that have, 6-minute clips, 11-minute clips.
I don't know about that. I think that a lot of
Maybe
people
if you're a businessman in a hotel room, you're buying the hotel's porn. But I only know that people even do that. Everybody's got a computer with them. So why not just do the same thing in a hotel that you do at home, which is wait for the family to go to sleep and then just start, clicking around.
Yeah, I'm sure people
Your
are
best
clicking
friend
around.
will be an
Probably
AI
watching a
program.
variety of styles and everything like that. I was going to tease JD Vance on another note as we get ready to head out of world politics. But if you're going to pick up a trophy, I think you should have a coordination and know how to hold the trophy, because apparently he tried to almost drop the sports trophy.
That was a bad trophy. That trophy wasn't glued together properly. It came apart. And yeah, like maybe he should have practiced picking up the trophy, but it looked like it weighed, I don't know, 20, 25 pounds, had a big heavy base. And he was wrestling with the base, and then somebody else was helping with the top, and they just came apart and dropped,
Was that JD Vance?
Yeah,
That
it was
Vance,
the
yes.
it was
That's because
the
he's never won a trophy before. Give him a break.
Okay. It was the big one. It was the trophy for winning March Madness. Oh no, I'm sorry, for winning the college football championship.
Right, college football championship. Right.
Yes. Give him a break. He's never won a trophy. He's not a sports guy. So,
but maybe thanks to his wife, maybe he is very good at the what do you call it, Kama Sutra. So maybe he knows.
Isn't JD Vance a
Or maybe he's good at cricket
politician?
because he is Indian.
Isn't he a politician, if I'm not mistaken? Mark?
Say what?
Well,
JD Vance is an American politician, right?
yeah.
Yes, he is.
Oh, good for him.
Right. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
All right.
All right,
Have a
we'll
good
see you
one out of
tomorrow.
here. Time to end world politics. And I'll see you all on World Edition tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.